April is on slide 7 now. She moves well. Practiced, eye contact at the right moments. The deck looks familiar because it is. Same roadmap, same milestones, same projections. Different colors, identical architecture. Sitting in the back row. Capital Factory, Austin. April doesn't know anyone here knows who she is. She's wrong. 4 rows up, Harlan Vale is at the judges' table. Managing director and co-founder of Mace Ventures, the lead sponsor of this competition. He reviewed the original version of this deck 7 months ago and wrote one comment in the margin. Clear and accurate. April clicks to slide 8. Unit economics. Same model, same assumptions, numbers slightly rounded. Harlan doesn't look at the stage. He looks at the back row, finds the face, raises his eyebrows slightly. Smallest nod. He waits for April to finish. That morning, in the hotel lobby. Sorry, it's just business. She'd already decided, set it to close the door before walking through. Smiled, said, "See you in there." When April finishes, the ask, the thank you, Harlan turns his chair around and says, "Well, ma'am, should we fire her now, or would you prefer to handle it yourself?" The room goes quiet. "My name is Zola Mace, chair of Mace Ventures. My fund ran this competition. That was my plan. Subscribe if you've ever watched someone use something of yours against you and had to wait for exactly the right moment to respond. Drop a comment and tell me how long the wait was. I'll be reading everyone." Here is what the room actually looked like during those 11 minutes on stage. The Capital Factory main hall in Austin seats comfortably about 60. Today it has 43 pitch competition attendees, 12 presenting founders waiting their turn along the side wall, 3 judges at a long table facing the stage, and 1 person in the back row who organized the whole thing. April's slide deck was projected on a 12-foot screen behind her. From the back row, the resolution was good enough to read the labels on each data point. The font was Helvetica Neue. She'd changed it from the Source Sans Pro in the original, which was the right call aesthetically, to be honest. The color scheme was navy and gold instead of teal and slate. The visual identity was hers, the content underneath it was not. She had rehearsed. This was clear from the first 30 seconds. She paused at the right places, handled the clicker with practiced ease, didn't rush through the market-sized slides the way nervous presenters do. The confidence was genuine in the sense that she had earned it through preparation, which is a real kind of confidence. It just wasn't earned through the work the confidence was being applied to. Slide 3 was the problem identification. Same framework, same framing of the fashion tech supply chain fragmentation, same language around the last-mile connection problem between independent designers and small batch manufacturers, which was a phrase developed specifically to describe Threadlink and which had gone through 4 drafts before landing on those exact words. Harlan had written a comment in the margin of the original deck, months ago, next to that phrase. Clear and accurate. He remembered writing it. When April said those exact words on stage, his pen stopped moving. He gave it 2 more slides before looking at the back row. Slide 7, the go-to-market roadmap, had the same 3-phase structure with the same 18-month timeline and the same inflection point at month 14. Slide 8 had the unit economics model with the same LTV formula construction, a relatively unusual approach to calculating cohort-based lifetime value that Zola had developed with a financial modeler over 6 weeks. When Harlan looked at the back row, he raised both eyebrows slightly. The expression of someone who knows something and wants to confirm he's seeing what he thinks he's seeing. Gave him the nod, waited. Here is who April was, in the 9 years before the Capital Factory main hall. Since the MBA program at UT Austin, same cohort, same strategy track, the kind of friendship that forms when 2 people are both too curious and too competitive to stop talking after class ends. April is genuinely sharp. This needs to be said clearly, because what she did doesn't require her to be stupid, and she isn't. She's good with numbers, excellent with people, has the commercial instinct that MBA programs try to teach, and that mostly either exists in a person or it doesn't. She could have built something. She could have built a lot of things. She also has a persistent relationship with shortcuts. This was visible in school, the way a framing from a case study would appear in a presentation without attribution, the way someone else's analytical framework would get incorporated and presented as her own read. It was the kind of thing you notice once and decide not to confront, because you're 25 and both tired and you tell yourself it's minor, it's graduate school, people do this. It doesn't mean anything about who she actually is. She would lift a framing from a case study without attribution, fold someone else's analysis into a presentation, and present it as her own read. Small things. The pattern of someone who takes the path that costs less effort and doesn't always track carefully who built the path. After school, April went to a strategy consulting firm in Dallas, then to a tech company in Austin, which brought her back, then to another consulting engagement. She moved between things with the pace of someone looking for the right situation, without a clear picture of what right looked like. The motion was real. She worked hard in all of it, but the trajectory was flat in the way that hard work without a clear direction produces flat trajectories. Zola went to a VC-backed fintech for 3 years on the operations side, learning how capital actually moved, how the infrastructure worked, what made a fund's portfolio healthy or troubled from the inside. Then to a smaller fund where she spent 4 years learning early-stage investing from someone who had done it for 20 years and who was rigorous about what early stage meant and what it required from both sides. Then to Harlan. Harlan Vale had been building a fund infrastructure for 3 years, the LP relationships, the thesis, the deal flow network, and needed someone with operator experience to run the investment practice alongside him. The match was clear after the first conversation. They launched Mace Ventures in year 2 of their partnership, seed and early Series A, Austin-based, focused on marketplace and platform businesses in industries with structural inefficiency, industries where the supply side and demand side of a market exist and want to transact, but are being prevented from doing it at scale by legacy infrastructure, information asymmetries, or both. The fund thesis was built from 6 years of pattern recognition, watching which businesses had the strongest unit economics when you looked past the fundraising narrative and into the actual model. Marketplace businesses with strong network effects in industries that had been underinvested. The fashion tech supply chain was one of several verticals they had been tracking. April had been inside the thinking for most of the years it was developing. The late-night conversations about the thesis, the dinners where the fund strategy sharpened, the first LP meetings, which she knew the details of because Zola had processed them with her afterward. She was the closest friend through all of it. She had seen everything. She had also seen Threadlink from the first slide. Threadlink came from 2 years inside the fund. Watching the fashion tech space across dozens of deal reviews, seeing the same friction surface in company after company, fragmented supply chain relationships, no efficient marketplace connecting independent designers with fabric suppliers and small batch manufacturers at the scale that emerging brands actually operate at. The large manufacturers had procurement relationships. The small designers didn't. The gap between them was expensive, slow, and full of middlemen who added cost without adding value. The unit economics of solving it made sense on paper. The matching problem was solvable with the right platform architecture, similar to problems that had been solved in other verticals, adapted for the dynamics of fashion supply chain. 2 years of thinking about it. 8 months building the deck into something that could withstand serious scrutiny. April was on the couch the first time the deck was open on the screen. A Tuesday in April, takeout from the Thai place 2 blocks from the apartment, a conversation that had started about something else. She asked what was on the screen. Told her. A side project, a marketplace concept, building something to see whether it held together under pressure. She asked a few questions. Good ones, actually. She understood the space. She came back 4 more times over the following months, not to work on it, just present the way close friends are present when someone is doing something they care about. Asking questions when there was a question, listening to the answers, watching the go-to-market roadmap get built on a December Tuesday, 3 phases laid out across a spreadsheet, the logic connecting them becoming clear while the wine was being finished. She said it was one of the clearest marketplace theses she'd seen. Said it twice. The second time was in January, after she'd seen the full deck including the financial model. In February, she mentioned she was thinking about leaving consulting. Wanted to build something. In March, she applied to the Mace Ventures Spring Pitch competition through the public application portal, under her full name, with a deck she had named Threadlink, Supply Chain Marketplace for Independent Designers. The name was the same, the deck was the same, the color scheme was different, the competition applications were reviewed blind, names removed before the review queue, a practice implemented to reduce familiarity bias in the early screening stage. 41 applications for 12 spots, reviewed them over 3 days, ranked them, passed the top 20 to Harlan for secondary review. Application 38 was April's, The name field had been replaced with a code number per the process. The concept was strong. The deck was unusually polished. Not the polished of someone who had hired a designer, but the polished of someone who had iterated a deck through many drafts until the logic held together. Flagged it. Sent it to Harlan. He called 40 minutes later. Did you look at 38? Flagged it. Strong concept. Why? A pause. The LTV formula. The cohort-based construction. The way the retention curve assumptions feed into the 3-year projection. Another pause. I've reviewed somewhere over 600 pitch decks this calendar year. Nobody uses this exact construction. This is your model. Pulled up application 38. Pulled up the ThreadLink submission from 7 months prior. The one filed in the early access pipeline, before the competition existed, when it had been submitted as an experiment to see how the concept held up against Harlan's review. Compared the unit economics section line by line. Identical. Not similar. Identical. Same formula structure, same cell logic, same assumptions baked into the same places. The numbers were slightly rounded differently, which was the only modification. Asked Harlan to run the metadata comparison on the graphic assets. The software extracts embedded creation data from design files, creation timestamp, software version, font package, vector path structure. It takes 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Every infographic in application 38 shared source metadata with the ThreadLink originals. Same creation timestamps in several cases, not just the date, the exact second. Same embedded font files from the same font package installed on the same machine. Same vector paths. April had opened the original Figma files, changed the colors to navy and gold, changed Helvetica Neue from Source Sans Pro, and rebuilt the slides directly on top of the source assets. This is not inspiration. This is not parallel development. This is the source files, reskinned. The metadata report was complete by the end of day 3 of the review. Harlan filed the report. The application moved forward in the review queue, not to the yes pile or the no pile, but to a third category that doesn't usually exist, and that required a decision about what to do with it. The decision was made in a 5-minute conversation. The application would be permitted to proceed to the pitch stage. Here is what Harlan said on the phone after the metadata report came back. He had reviewed it for 5 minutes before calling. 4 pages, side-by-side screenshots of the infographic source files, the timestamp data, the vector path comparisons, clear and thorough, no ambiguity about what had happened. What do you want to do? He said. I want to watch her pitch it. A pause. To our fund. To our fund. In the competition I organized. In the room I run. With the metadata report already complete and filed. And then? You handle it the way you'd handle any submission with these findings. He was quiet. Harlan runs scenarios. It's built into how he processes. She doesn't know you'll be there, he said. She knows I exist. She's known that for 9 years. She just didn't look at the website. This is going to be a significant room moment. Yes, you're comfortable with that. She told me this morning it was just business. She meant it as a way out of obligation. She was right that it's business. She just didn't know whose business she was standing in. He said he'd see her at 3. The competition ran 1 to 5. April was the 8th presenter, which meant she went on at 2:45, which meant the room had been sitting for 90 minutes, and was attentive in the way rooms become attentive when they've settled into the rhythm of the event and are giving each presenter full focus. Slot placement, coincidence. The metadata report, not. Back to the main hall. The room is still quiet. April is still at the podium. Harlan is still turned in his chair. Stand up from the back row. The room watches. First the back rows, then the middle, then the front. People with phones put them down. The 11 other founders along the side wall look up from their prep. The quiet deepens. Walk to the judges' table. Stop beside Harlan's chair. Look at April. She cycles through the expressions fast. Surprise. Then the rapid calculation of someone determining what has happened and what it costs. Then the stillness that comes before understanding, when the understanding is going to be expensive. Zola, she says, very carefully. I didn't know you were. The fund chair, Harlan says, with the pleasantness he uses when professionalism is doing significant structural work. She chairs the investment committee. Her name has been on our website for 3 years. It was on the registration materials for this competition. April looks at the banner behind the stage. Mace Ventures. The logo she had seen every time she opened the competition website and had not clicked through to the About page. Business. Just business. The deck you presented today shares source metadata with a ThreadLink submission filed to our application portal 7 months ago, Harlan says. We ran the comparison 4 days ago when your application came up in review. We have the full report. April doesn't say anything. The original submission is filed under a different applicant name. She's standing next to me. She looks at Zola. She knows. You told me this morning it was just business, Zola says. Level voice. Level is what this requires. You were right. Here's what business looks like. I thought you'd moved past it, she says. You're running the fund. I thought ThreadLink was something that didn't go anywhere. A side project I hadn't fully pursued. Different from gone. And even if it were gone, it's still mine. The room is very quiet. 43 people, none of them expecting to watch this today. Your application is withdrawn, Harlan says. Mace Ventures won't be proceeding with investment consideration. You should consult an attorney before taking ThreadLink forward in any form, given what the metadata report shows. April picks up her clicker. She looks at the room, at the 43 people who have been watching for the past 2 minutes, and who now understand, at varying levels of detail, what has just happened. She walks to the exit. The door closes. 10-minute break, Harlan says. We'll resume at 3:15. He says it with the steadiness of someone who has run enough high-stakes rooms to know that a room needs time to redistribute before it can proceed. The next presenter should get ready. The room moves, not quietly. Here is what happened afterward, with the friendship and with ThreadLink. The friendship was over before the Capital Factory Hall. It had been over since February, or possibly earlier, since the December evening on the couch when she was supposed to be just watching and was doing something else. The pitch competition was where it became visible, but it had ended in a decision April had made before she ever typed Mace Ventures pitch competition into a search engine. She texted 3 days later. Longer than most texts Zola had received from her, which said something about the amount of processing she'd done. It covered the pressure she'd been under for the past year, the feeling of watching everyone around her move forward while she felt stuck. The belief, and she stated it clearly, which was either honest or strategic, that Zola had moved on from ThreadLink and wouldn't be pursuing it, that it had been an idea that didn't have a clear path, and she'd watched Zola set it aside to focus on the fund, that she'd told herself it wasn't really taking something if the person wasn't using it, that she'd planned to tell her eventually, after some early success, when the context would be different. It ended with, I know this hurt you, and I know I can't fix it. I'm sorry. Read it once, did not respond. Not because there was nothing to say, there was plenty to say, and some of it would have been satisfying to deliver in exactly the measured, level tone that the Capital Factory Hall had shown was available. Because the text was organized around an emotional exchange, it wanted guilt or anger or the feeling of betrayal to be expressed and received. It wanted the conversation to be about the 9 years and what they meant and what had happened to them. The 9 years had already been processed. The metadata report had been processed. The ThreadLink seed round paperwork was in progress. The emotional accounting was done and didn't need a further transaction. Didn't respond to the text. Didn't respond to the one that followed 2 weeks later, which was shorter and ended with a question mark. 3 weeks after the competition, Mace Ventures made a seed investment in ThreadLink. Not as the operating founder. That role requires someone whose full attention is the business, and the fund is full-time work. Part of what the fund does is find operators who can take a concept and build the organization around it. The investment was structured around the inventor and advisor role, equity reflecting both the intellectual origin of the concept and the ongoing advisory work, with a right of first refusal on subsequent rounds. The operator who joined to build it out came from the Mace Ventures network, someone who had run operations at 2 marketplace businesses before and had been looking for the right concept. The first meeting was a 2-hour whiteboard session that became 3 hours. She understood the matching problem immediately, which is the right test for whether someone is the right person to build a thing, not whether they're impressed by the deck, but whether they start thinking about the problems before you've finished explaining them. ThreadLink is in market. Early traction in the Austin and New York independent designer communities. Adoption is faster on the demand side than the supply side, which is standard for marketplace builds. The supply side, the fabric suppliers and small batch manufacturers, turns out to be the harder side to recruit, which the model had anticipated. Working on it. The fund had its strongest quarter in the period following the competition. 3 investments closed, Threadlink among them. Harlan included "our most eventful pitch day on record" as a throwaway line in the LP update letter. Several LPs asked about it at the quarterly meeting. The story travels in the right rooms, which is one of the things rooms like the Capital Factory main hall are for. April is at a different company now, in a different city. The Threadlink metadata report is in the fund's files. It has not needed to go further. She has not attempted to enter the space. The report's existence is sufficient. The practical accounting is done. The emotional accounting, 9 years, the couch, December, the hotel lobby, is also done, in the way that things are done when the situation has resolved, and carrying the weight of them has no further function. Here is the lesson, as cleanly as it can be stated. April said it was just business. She meant it as a frame, a way to move the action outside the space where friendship obligations apply, to make the taking of something feel like a transaction rather than a betrayal. She said it to herself as much as to Zola. It was the sentence that made it possible to do what she was going to do. She was right that it was business. The error was not in the framing. The error was in not knowing whose business she was conducting it in. The room she pitched in had been organized by the person whose plan she was pitching. The fund whose logo was on the banner behind her had been co-founded by that person. The partner who was going to evaluate her pitch had reviewed the original version of it 7 months before April applied. The metadata embedded in every infographic she had restyled connected, forensically and completely, to a source submission filed under a different name. She walked into a room thinking the room was neutral. It wasn't. The room belonged, as it had from the beginning, to the person sitting in the back row. April said it was just business. She was right about that. Business is exactly what it became. Documented, time-stamped, on file, and resolved. The plan is funded. The friendship is done. The metadata report is in the file. The woman who was told it was just business sat in the back row, waited for exactly the right moment, and walked to the front. The waiting took 30 seconds. The preparation for it took 9 years of watching, 1 December evening with a bottle of wine, and 4 minutes of software running a comparison. Sometimes the right move is immediate. Sometimes it's waiting for the room to be exactly what it needs to be. Sometimes you let someone walk onto your stage and say what they're going to say, and then the room is exactly what it needs to be. And then you stand up. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Every week there's another story about someone who waited for exactly the right room. Drop a comment. What would you have said from the back row? I'll be reading every word.